Hey everyone, Mo here, and before the video begins, I just want to let you guys know that my schedule has opened up for me to do coaching again. So if you're interested in private one-on-one coaching for me to help you, whether you're a newer player and you want to excel at the game very quickly and learn the fundamentals without developing any bad habits early, or if you're an experienced player who's already maybe platinum or diamond in your top 1%, but you need some help filling in the gap to get you to that 0.01%, to make you just some of the best, then hit me up on Discord and I can get you in some private one-on-one coaching lessons to help you polish up any skills you want to refine and help you learn all of the secrets to becoming a top player. That's it. I hope you enjoy the video. Hey everybody, Mo here, and in this video I'm going to bring you guys a Lee Sin deck guide for dummies deck guide, and it's just going to go over how to play Lee Sin, the most important cards in Lee Sin, and go over some of the things that I see a lot of Lee Sin players do wrong, why I think Lee Sin is powerful, and maybe if you're contemplating bringing Lee Sin to seasonals, I don't recommend playing a deck you learned the day before to seasonals, but if you wanted to play Lee Sin, here you go. Now here's the deck guide, so it can help you out, give you a little boost of encouragement and help you out, maybe teach you a couple of things you didn't know, so that way you can win one of your extra game at seasonals. So before we get into the deck guide itself, I want to remind you guys that we're really close to hitting that 3,000 subscriber goal, so if you guys could help me out a ton with the YouTube algorithm and help me reach that goal by clicking the subscribe button, it would mean a lot. It would help me out a lot. And let me know down in the description below what type of content you guys want to see in the daily content videos. So that's it for the intro. Let's get into the deck guide. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do in each deck guide is we're actually going to go over why each card is in the deck, the purpose of each card, then we're going to go over some of the play patterns of the deck, and then we're going to go over mulligan guides against each of the different archetypes. So, the first thing we're going to go over here is each card and why it's in the deck. So we'll just start it from the cheapest, go all the way down to your Lee Sin. So, Gifts from Beyond. We play 3 gifts. Very simple. Eye of the Dragon, not a balanced card. It single-handedly wins you games against things like aggro and mid-range. Fun fact, when you get to play 6 Eye of the Dragons, it makes it even a more not balanced card. So, we play 3 Gifts from Beyond and 3 Eye of the Dragons. I'll just clump these in together here. Because Gifts from Beyond is a 3 mana Eye of the Dragon. It's 1 mana for Gifts, 3 mana for Crescendum. You get one of those manas back when you summon the Eye of the Dragon. Also, when you Gifts from Beyond into Crescendum, that's 2 spells. It triggers your Eye of the Dragon. So you get an Eye of the Dragon in play, triggered, so the next turn you get to start with a 2-1 in play. Very cool, very balanced. I hope they keep this in the game forever, for sure. Yep, I love it. Yep, that's me. So that's why you play Gifts from Beyond. 90% of the time you're just using it for Crescendum. Every once in a while you can use it as an Infernum to give your Lee Sin Overwhelm, so you can have like lethal. And then you have all these like other flex options here that's like random use, but most of the time you're just using it on turn 3 to get an Eye of the Dragon out for free. So next we'll go to Zoe. So the reason I play Zoe over like the auction version or over Karma is Zoe is an actual win condition that comes online and starts threatening your opponents. Equinox is another not balanced card, so if you can just like Zoe hit, maybe grab an Equinox your opponent's like really cute minion down, boom, there you go, you're chilling. You could Zoe off of that star chart, you can find a stun 2, you can find a 0 mana blocker, you can find a 1 mana blocker, you can find a whole bunch of stuff, and on top of that, Zoe's just a constant threat that you're telling your opponent, hey, you have to deal with this card or my Zoe's eventually going to level by, most of the time by turn 5. And if you play Zoe on turn 1 and you're attacking on turn 1, you can have Zoe leveled on turn 5, turn 6 consistently. So you're saying, hey, you have a couple turns before my Zoe levels, and then the game's basically over because I'm just going to start giving everything lifesteal and elusive and spell shield and all that type of jazz. And your opponent's really just going to have to deal with the Zoe, and that's basically why I like Zoe so much. So next is Guiding Touch. So Guiding Touch is just basically a cheap way to cycle cards. It's a cheap way to trigger your Eye of the Dragons and to trigger your Deep Meditations, as well as it just cycles and draws you a card, which is really good. It can give you a little bit of game against aggro. It can also heal your unit up if they are trying to kill you with like a flock on your Lee Sin or a flock on your Eye of the Dragon. You can always just go, okay, after you Mystic Shot my Lee Sin, just immediately Guiding Touch my Lee Sin. Therefore, it's not damaged, so you can't do any of your damagey spells. What Nopify? Because Nopify is really good against the aggro meta right now. Being able to Nopify a Noxian Fervor is really huge. It doesn't hit really anything in the like Auction Sever decks except for Cataclysm. Now in the really big like Demacia, Shurima's getting really big. So you can Nopify Cataclysms and Rallies are also played in the elusive aggro style decks. So Nopify usually has 1 to 2 targets in every deck except for like Shurima Ionia, but outside of that, Nopify hits at least one thing, so it's pretty useful overall to have just a little one of. Pale Cascade. So 3 Pale Cascade, for the same reason you play Guiding Touch, really, is just a super cheap way to trigger your Eye of the Dragons, to trigger your Deep Meditations, and it cycles. So that means that it draws a card, so it replaces itself. So that's why the Targon version of Lee Sin is so much better than the Uxtran version of Lee Sin. Because at the end of the day, Shurima Ionia can kill you in 1 turn, sure, and it can kill you at burst speed, sure. But it doesn't have the things that Targon gives you, which is your ways to cycle. So you lose a lot of your draw engine, so you're going to run out of cards more often. You're going to be way more taxed on your Eye of the Dragons. You're going to only be able to trigger Eye of the Dragon like so many times before running out of cards. And that's why Targon's is so much better. So that's why Pale Cascade is in here. As well as, it does give your Lee Sin a little bit of attack to help you out with that OTK potential. But for the most part, it's played just because it draws you a card. Next, we have 2 Sonic Wave. So Sonic Wave is really good against all of these challenger units for whenever you don't have Lee Sin in play necessarily. But let's say you have an Eye of the Dragon and it's your turn to attack. You can just go ahead and use Sonic Wave, pull in a champion or pull in a card that you need. You can use the Eye of the Dragon's a 2-1, so you can go Sonic Wave, Resonating Strike on the little Dragon Link. That's 4 damage. Boom, you're killing a Sivir, right? It's just a really nice flexible way to make even your tasty Fae folks and stuff like that be able to kill things that you shouldn't usually be able to kill without Lee Sin, and you don't have to wait for Lee Sin. 3 Twin Disciplines, because Twin Disciplines is just broken. It gives you +3 attacks. So this is really makes it super easy to OTK with Lee Sin, as well as the 3 health lets you be able to keep your like Zoe and Eye of the Dragons alive against aggro, and your tasty Fae folk against aggro, and it's just super broken. And I don't really know why they thought Twin Disciplines needed to be at 2 mana. Hush, play 2 Hush. It's really good in the mirror match, as well as it's decent against Viego if it's ever not bugged. Hush is just like an okay card all around. That's why you're only playing 2 and not 3. You could make a case to go down to 1 Hush, but with all of the like pump spells right now, especially with people going like, oh, play Sivir, play, elusive, double quick attack, all that type of stuff, and OTKU, you would like to have 2 Hush, so that way you have the chance of at least going like Hush on the Sivir, or maybe you can do like Gifts from Beyond, try and stun the Sivir, break the spell shield. If you can break spell shield on Sivir and then Hush it, that's always really big. Will of Ionia, Hush, all that type of stuff. So it's good for breaking spell shields, as well as against non-spell shielded units. It's good to just stop them from being annoying. I'm on the Tasty Fae Folk version here. If you notice, the only units in this deck are the only non-champions in this deck are 3 Eye of the Dragons and 2 Tasty, just because I want to make sure I never lose to aggro. And if you're playing 6 Eye of the Dragons, because you're playing Gifts from Beyond, so between 6 Eye of the Dragons and 2, sometimes 3 Tasty Fae Folk, you should never lose to aggro. And so that's why they're in here. You can take out Tasty and put in, I saw a lot of people playing like the pod. The 6 mana new pod, it seemed to be fine, I guess, but I like the anti-aggro plan, so that's why I play Tasty Fae Folk. 2 Zenith Blade, you're playing 2 instead of 3 because we play Gifts from Beyond. That kind of techs in as a 3rd or more Zenith Blade if you absolutely need it. Zenith Blade is just here to give your Lee Sin Overwhelm, give your Eye of the Dragon a big stat early so you can block aggro, and then give the second one onto the Lee Sin later on to win the game. 3 Conch Palm, 2 Will of Ionia, both these do the same thing. They're just stall tools. When your opponent plays like a really big Gangplank or really big Sejuani, you want to be able to stop them from attacking you and stop them from hitting you in the face over and over again. So it's good for those reasons. It's good, again, paired with Hush to stop the really big like double strike attacks from the Sivir Uxtran style decks where they have, oh, make my Ruin Gunner huge and double strike. You just go like, okay, well, Palm Will, Hush Will, stuff like that, and it completely stops their ginormous combo, and it stops you from dying. And anything that stops you from dying is typically pretty good. So 2 Denies, you could probably go down on Denies. It's just in seasonal tournament, I expect there to be a lot of like either Anivia decks or Field of Rush decks or just Shadow Isle control decks in general. And typically, Deny is good against these like slower decks. It's also good in the mirror match because you can deny either Zenith Blade or you can deny the Dragon Kick from Lee Sin. So it's not bad there. And then Deep Meditation is amazing. It completely refills your hand. Or not refills your hand, but it gives you a bunch of cards. If you spend 2 spells early on to trigger your Eye of the Dragon with cheap things like Guiding Touch, Pale Cascade, or even like a Sonic Wave, gives you 3 mana to summon 2 spells, then you get 2 more spells the next turn, and this already counts towards 1 spell itself. So if you can chain like a Deep Meditation for 3 mana, is like 3 mana draw 2 is absolutely nuts. So if you go 3 mana, draw 2 spells, and you play 1 more spell, boom, you've now triggered your Eye of the Dragon again. Or if you have a second Deep Med, you can trigger Deep Meditation again, and it's absolutely bonkers.
So, and the last card in your deck is going to be Lee Sin, and of course, there shouldn't be really much explanation to why Lee Sin's in this deck. He's really big, really like hard to deal with because of the barrier and because you have denies to kill, to deny vengeances and stuff like that. It's just crazy. It's just crazy good. So Lee Sin, for those of you that don't know how it works, leveled up Lee Sin says, whenever you cast a spell, give me Challenger. I Dragon's Rage enemies that I challenge. So if you give Lee Sin Overwhelm and you go to attack, when you attack, you Dragon's Rage the enemy that's blocking you. And Dragon's Rage means you will kick the enemy into the Nexus, and then that enemy will either die or it'll get sent back to the hand. But you deal damage to the Nexus equal to Lee Sin's power. And then if you give Lee Sin Overwhelm, now that the blocker is gone because you kicked it either back to the hand or you killed it, now your Lee Sin just hits face because he has Overwhelm and there's not a unit blocking him. So what works is if you get Lee Sin to 10 power with Overwhelm, you will deal 10 damage to the Nexus off of Dragon's Rage. The blocker will be removed from combat, and now nothing will be blocking your Lee Sin, and he'll do another 10 damage during combat, and then you just 20'd your opponent in one move. So that's the main combo with Lee Sin, is you do something like leveled Lee Sin is at 4 power, Zenith Blade puts him at 5 power, then you just go like Twin, or like Twin Disciplines, Sonic Wave or something like that, and you have a 10 power Lee Sin. So this is assuming your opponent's even at 20 and you have to 20 them. Anytime you have to get your opponent at any life total, just take the number they're at and divide it by 2, and that's how much power you have to get Lee Sin at. So if your opponent's at 16 HP, because maybe you got some chip damage in with like Zoe or the Dragon Links and stuff like that, if they're at 16 HP, you only have to get them to 8. So that's just like Lee Sin, Zenith Blade, and then 1 Twin Discipline. If they're at 14, you only have to get them to 7, stuff like that. So you figure out that your opponent could be at a higher life total, but they're really just dead the minute you play Lee Sin. So that's why each card is in the deck. We're going to go over typical curves and how to play against each archetype, and then I'm going to drop a Mulligan guide and then a full-on matchup guide in my Discord. Alright, so now we're going to go over the second part of the video, which is explaining the different curves and how you want to play out versus each of the 3 major archetypes, which is going to be aggro decks, your mid-range decks, and then your control decks. So, against aggro decks, what you're really looking for here is going to be your Zoe, your Eye of the Dragons, really just Eye of the Dragon, Tasty Faithfolks, your cheap units here to help you stabilize, which Eye of the Dragon is really good at, Tasty Faithfolk is really good at because it gains you life, even Zoe is really good at it because you can trade Zoe for like a 2-1 or a 3-1, and that's really, really good for you. So what we're looking to do is just play an Eye of the Dragon on either turn 2 or get it from Gifts from Beyond. That's really good. And then the best thing you can do that I see a lot of people don't do when you have your Eye of the Dragon is if you have a Zenith Blade, go ahead, throw Zenith Blade on the Eye of the Dragon. Because a 1-3 Eye of the Dragon is like okay to deal with, and the only way your aggro opponent's really going to deal with it is if they get excited it, or if they Noxie and Fervor your Eye of the Dragon, which in most cases if they're Fervoring a unit, you're really, really happy, or if they're get exciteding a unit, you're really, really happy. But because this is your only real way to consistently like de-apply pressure and just block and save a whole bunch of life, it's really worth it to try and keep it alive. And if you run out of like Twin Disciplines and Nopifies and Pale Cascades and stuff like that, maybe you have to block with your Eye of the Dragon once and they try and pump it up, it can become a big problem. However, a 2-5 Eye of the Dragon is almost impossible for any aggro deck to realistically deal with, and without using up so many resources that by the time they do kill it with like double Fervor or like 3 of cards or so, then you're just like extremely happy at that point. And if they spend 2 to 3 cards on your Eye of the Dragon, that should buy you enough time to either play another one or get a tasty, or just straight up play Lee Sin and just start winning the game from there. So the biggest thing I can give you here is Eye of the Dragon, and then don't be afraid to go Eye of the Dragon turn 2, Zenith Blade turn 3, make that Eye of the Dragon big, and then now you can start blocking with the Eye of the Dragon, and it's just a humongous threat for your aggro opponent. So in the mid-range matchup, a lot of times Eye of the Dragon still helps you stabilize here. If their plan is just go like 1 unit at a time, that's big. Worst case scenario is you play Eye of the Dragon, they give it vulnerable, and you're just like, okay, well that kind of sucks, but if they don't give it vulnerable, or if they give it vulnerable and you can keep it alive with like Twin Disciplines and all those shenanigans, then you're pretty good. Mid-range matchups are by far the hardest for you because you have very limited ways of actually not dying, that being basically just Eye of the Dragon. And then you have to play your Lee Sin, and if they're decked with like single combat or vulnerable and challenger and stuff like that, they could have a lot of combat tricks and combat strike tricks like single combat concerted strike to really deal with your Lee Sin pretty well, and that could become a problem pretty quickly for you. So this is definitely the hardest one. The thing I recommend for here is trying to hold up Nopify for single combat, or deny for Concerted Strike for your Lee Sin, and then eventually just find a way to go like play Lee Sin. You don't even have to play Lee Sin on 5 necessarily. You just want to try and stabilize with Eye of the Dragon, and then play your Lee Sin on turns like 6 and 7 when you can play Lee Sin and you know for 100% that he's safe. What I try and do is play Lee Sin the turn before I plan on winning with the attack. So if you're attacking on, let's say, odds, like, so you're attacking on turns 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, then maybe play Lee Sin on turn 6 when it's your opponent's attack turn. After they've attacked, you can play Lee Sin on turn 6, have 4 mana open, so that way you can deny if you need to. You can cast 2 2-mana spells to give it barrier if you need to. Stuff like that. It'd be super worth it. And then that way, when it's your turn 7 and it's time for you to start attacking and win the game, you can open up with a Zenith Blade, and then now you have 7 whole mana to deal with whatever shenanigans your opponent's trying to do, and that can typically lead you into a pretty good win. So I always try and play Lee Sin the turn before I'm about to open attack, or the turn before I'm going to attack, so that way you have maximum mana to play your Zenith Blade or play your Infernum, and then start trying to just win the game that turn with a shit ton of mana to stop your opponent from interacting with your combo. And the control decks are typically the easiest, where you just get to go, okay, any one thing you have to deal with my Lee Sin, I'm just going to deny it. If your main plan is, oh, I'm just gonna like vengeance your Lee Sin, I have deny. If your plan is, oh, I'm gonna try and like flock and Scorched Earth your Lee Sin, we have guiding touches we can use proactively, and then we have like notifies and denies. So it's really hard for any control deck to realistically deal with your Lee Sin between all the barriers, the 3 denies, and against Ezreal, Draven, and Swain TF specifically, guiding touch just stopping them from being able to say, oh, I'm gonna kill your damaged unit. So you should be feeling pretty good about all of that stuff. So that's how you would play, and those are the tips against each of the specific archetypes. So now I'm just going to go into Mulligan Guide and go over what you want to Mulligan for against each of the different archetypes. Part of the video, we're going to go over Mulligan Guides, the part that everybody loves and everybody looks for. So, in the Mulligan Guides, we're going to go over each archetype, and we're going to tell you how to Mulligan for each of those, and I'm going to have a matchup guide in my Discord to tell you all the key ways to play against each specific tier 1 and some of the tier 2 decks. So, to start off with, against aggro, what are you looking for in your Mulligan? Very simple. All the Mulligans are very simple. You just want as many Eye of the Dragons and Tasty Faithfolks as possible. Card you always want in your opener is going to be Zoe. Zoe is a card that you will always want in your Mulligan. Other than Zoe, the different cards have different like rules between do you keep them or not. So you always want Zoe, and against aggro you're going to want Gifts from Beyond, Eye of the Dragons, Tasty Faithfolks, and that's just so you can negate some of the early game damage. There you go. So I would just full mulligan for all of those. Against your mid-range matchups, you're going to want Zoe, Tasty Faithfolk, and Gifts from Beyond. So the same like early game unit package. And then if you have Lee Sin and you have like a Zoe, Eye of the Dragon, right? If your hand is like Zoe, Eye of the Dragon, Lee Sin, and then some random card, that hand's pretty good. I would go ahead and keep that. I would keep Lee Sin against mid-range matchups if you already have 1 to 2 of the other cards that was already stated. And against control matchups, you just want Zoe. You don't want Eye of the Dragon and Tasty. You just want Zoe, Lee Sin, and then like denies, basically. So Zoe, Lee Sin, deny, and then your goal here is just to try and keep your Zoe alive as long as possible until eventually you just slam down a Lee Sin and win the game. So that's the main goal here, is to have Zoe, have Wasted Protector, so like Zoe Notify, Zoe Twin Discipline, Zoe Pale Cascade, and then you really force your opponent to try really hard to kill your Zoe, and then after that, you say, okay, now here's this Lee Sin, and I've had enough time to draw enough cards to set my hand up, to sculpt my hand to be what I need it to be with things like Deep Meditation, and so now I have a Deny, I have Will of Ionia, I have, you know, Notifies, I have Twin Disciplines, all that stuff, so you can't really kill my Lee Sin. And those are what you really want to look for. So that's going to be it for this deck guide. If you want the matchup guide, which will tell you how to play against each specific matchups, it'll tell you like what are the key things to look out for against Ezreal Draven, what are the key things to look out for against like Sivir Auction, like specifically. Stuff like that. Make sure to head over to my Discord. Link will be in the description below, so that way you can download that, and you can have that for you if you plan on playing this deck in Seasonal. So if you plan on playing this deck in Seasonal, just let me know. I hope this video helped you out. If you don't plan on playing this, or you're just curious at either how the deck works, or you wanted to try it out on ladder, because you've seen some people have really good win rates with it, go ahead and let me know how it went for you. Let me know in the comments below what video you guys want to see next on the Deck Guide for Dummies series. That's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next video.